record for the length of the State of the Union speeches.
So much to remind everyone. Okay. Ready? Good morning. I'd like to call the meeting of the Prince William County Electoral Board to order. I apologize for being a few minutes late.
You're fine.
As I was telling my colleagues, it was a late night. So, thank you everyone for being here. We're going to ask everyone to please stand for a moment of silence, followed by our Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Our first order of business is the approval of the minutes from the last meeting. We all got those in advance, so thank you very much, Mr. Secretary, for preparing those. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Okay, so now we have reports from our fellow electoral board members. Madam Vice Chair, would you like to begin?
I don't have anything. Thank you.
Okay. And Mr. Secretary?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So first, I want to thank Natalia. We had a little extra drama in our firehouse primary for the Woodbridge supervisor, and I know that Natalia was very helpful to our candidates, to the committee, and to our chairman, and so I wanted to specifically, thank her for what she did to help walk everybody through that process. I also want to give a shout out to the former Commissioner of Elections, Commissioner Beals. So last summer, the Department of Justice began going around the country demanding that states turn over their voter registration database to Department of Justice, Homeland Security, who knows where it was going to go. And so far, there have only been a couple of states that agreed to do anything close to that. And to her great credit, Commissioner Beals ultimately decided not to turn that information over. I'm sure there was a considerable amount of political pressure, and so on the very last day of former Governor Youngkin's office, the Department of Justice filed a lawsuit against the commissioner, now our new commissioner, to try and get the voter registration database turned over to the feds. So we are, I think it's 251 days away from the midterm elections. Things are crazy. They're crazier than usual in Virginia because of various issues. But the good news is that elections are run by the states and local governments, not by the White House. And so the president can sign as many executive orders as he wants to change rules about elections, but the bottom line is elections are run by states and local governments. And this decentralization of the process, I think, should give voters some confidence in the fact that elections are, as long as they're run fairly and efficiently, then we can have confidence in the results. And so, I'm looking forward. This is going to be a challenging year, obviously, and not just in Virginia, but around the country. But I wanted to specifically commend former Commissioner Beals for making that decision. So that's all, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. These are the minutes, signed and approved. I do not have a report today, so we will go right to the general registers.
Okay. So, thank you all. A couple of topics. They don't have a real long report today. I wanted to say, first off, thank you to Natalia and John for stepping in for me at the last meeting. a few days before that meeting, my wife and I had our first baby, and mama and baby are healthy, and everyone's doing well, if not a little sleep deprived. And, but, you know, I thought, well, we have probably 5 elections this year. Let's really challenge myself and add a baby to the mix there. So, but we are, you know, adjusting, and everything's been really great so far. So, thanks to John and Natalia for doing a great job in my stead, and it's nice to know, really in any situation that we have, that I have people behind me and they have people behind them, and we have a really good team here in Prince William County. Related to that, before I get into the specifics of this meeting, you guys have sitting on your desk there our latest award, which is from the Election Center. That is going to be given at a conference next month, and we did a video because neither Loudon or ourselves, it was a joint award because our office and Loudon have partnered through that open house process. We came up with a program, and Loudon then took it and they built upon it and came to our open house and built upon that program and did an open house themselves, which we also attended, and then we brought ideas back from that open house. So it was good collaboration, and I haven't seen too many awards that were given to multiple counties, so it's really nice, I think, a testament to the partnership we have with Loudon, but also just counties in general in Virginia. We have a Registrars Association and regional meetings periodically, and statewide meetings, just like the electoral boards do as well, to discuss issues, talk about better ways we can best administer elections. It's heavy too. So if we ever have an intruder at the office, we now have a defensive weapon. But it's really nice to be recognized for the work that we've been doing. So thanks to our team and everyone that worked to set that up. That was really a team effort too, because every staff member was involved, whether they were helping tour groups, presenting to those groups. When tours came through, they would stop off at a number of different stations. And it was great to not only have lots of members of the public coming to that, but we had, you know, I think about half of our county supervisors has been to the open house this far. Our county manager has been there. We've had, you know, state senators and state delegates come through, and it's really good. It's helpful. You know, when you are a candidate, you learn how to win elections. You don't always know how elections work, so it's nice to see them involved in that, and hearing about the needs of our agencies as well as learning about the process. So really proud of that, and we're buying a trophy shelf at this point because we need somewhere to put these things for the public. So that was really nice recognition. So
Congratulations.
thank you
Great
all.
job.
Just wanted to note that off the top.
Let me,
Yeah.
I know it's going to be a busy season. Are you thinking about doing an open house this year, or are we going to?
I think we'll try to get one in. I think we're going to have to look at the calendar and see kind of where it makes sense. So that's Keith, was that a perfect transition, or I mean, so per the calendar, we have 5 elections on the slate at this point. The January 13th one is complete for the House of Delegates District number 23. The March 10th election is active. Mail ballots are already out. They probably have started arriving at people's homes, you know, today and yesterday, I would guess. We have voter guides going out this week, so people will hopefully get those by the end of the week, so they know when and where they can early vote. And Election Day is just around the corner for that one. There's an April 21st special election for the constitutional amendment related to redistricting. There are a number of legal challenges that are making that a little complicated. That is not really a surprise. You know, we've seen that in every state that's had some kind of redistricting thing over the last year. Texas and California and other states. So we are preparing for that and assuming that we will be going forward with it and are preparing as such. And if, you know, if for some reason that gets called off at some point, then we will all enjoy a couple weeks of quiet and get caught up on some things. And if it goes forward, we will be ready. So part of the meeting today is getting prepped for that and having the board make decisions about elements of that meeting. The primary election has officially been moved from June to August 4th. So that's where it becomes a little complicated with the open house. What we probably try to do is do an open house in I would guess like late August before we really get rolling for the November election. That's typically when we've done it. We also, the first year we did it, we had a lot of people that wanted to attend. It was a presidential year. It was a new concept. So we did several days. I think we'd probably just do, the last time we did it, we just did a whole day. So we'd probably do that again. We'd just do a single day, like a Friday or a weekend, and have people come through that are interested. So we will advertise that as it gets a little closer. And then, of course, the general election on November 3rd, and both those August and November elections are U.S. Congress and U.S. Senate, as well as some constitutional amendments for the state of Virginia that are likely to be on the ballot on November 3rd. I think there's a couple towns in our November election as well. I can't remember which ones, but
I know Dumfries.
Okay, Dumfries is one of them. Okay, I know there's a couple. We'll get the information out there. Our website is fully updated on both March 10th and April 21st for the early voting sites, all the key dates and that kind of thing. It's really important this election because the early voting overlaps slightly. Early voting is wrapping up for the March 10th, right as early voting for the April 21st election is starting. And so we might have voters going to, let's say, the DMV in particular, wanting to vote in the April 21st. They won't be able to do that until the week before. So the Prince William County ordinance for special elections opens all the satellites 1 week before election day, just like for primaries. So it starts, basically runs Saturday to Saturday, every single day for 8 straight days. The office itself will be open for early voting prior to that for the April 21st election. So that information is on the website. The sample ballots are on the website. The website is split up so you can, which election you want to see the information on, you can go to that. So we have that all updated. As I noted, legal challenges around the April 21st election. There's been a series of challenges and injunctions. So the status is a little bit unknown, but again, we're continuing to prepare while the courts and state resolve that matter. We have been instructed by the State Department of Elections to be prepared for it because obviously if for some reason it gets canceled and we've prepared for it, then that doesn't cause a difficulty for us. If we wait to prepare for it and the election goes forward, then we have a problem at that point. So we are getting ready for that and have the information up. But we will note that could change as our weeks go on here and as we get closer to that date. So we are setting up election tasks to be prepared for that and getting ready. Challenges and preparations with these overlapping elections. So we are sending voter guides for both elections to reduce confusion. There is a very short timeline on all of these, and so people know the dates when they can go vote, where they can go vote. We're sending that out. The most common searches on our website by far are early voting hours and locations and what's on the ballot. That probably makes up about 75–80% of the visits to our website. And that is what we really prioritize on the voter guide, which is really just a back and front postcard to keep it cost efficient. We send one of those to each household also to keep it cost efficient rather than sending 3 and 4 copies to the same household, but it does get some more information about that out there. We are developing some answers, some templates for calls on the election status as we continue to have questions about the April 21st election, when it's happening, if it's happening, all these special elections. So we are working on that in the office, so we're serving our voters well. We're also going to have some specialized training and handout for the early voting officers. So on those, I believe it's the 6th and the 7th, the Friday and the Saturday, just before the March 10th election. You will not be able to vote at the DMV, but we'll probably have people going to the DMV to vote in the April election. So we're going to have voter guide copies to give to people so they can see what the calendar is if they come in there, and we'll have to train the officers on that. Technically, at the office, you'll be able to vote for, I think, both elections on that Friday. So we'll have to have 2 different check-ins set up and then have to ask voters when they come in if they're there to vote for which election. I think anyone coming into the office on that day is likely there related to the April 21st because given how far away Woodbridge is, I think the last special election for the 23rd district, we only saw, I think, less than a dozen voters at the office for that whole week. So, anyway, we are preparing for training for that. And we have mail ballots for 2 elections incoming at the same time. We do have slight different identifications on the envelopes, so the return envelopes look a little different. That'll make it easy for our staff to be able to figure out which election that goes to, so it won't get confused. And of course, we continue our triple check system when any mail ballots come in to make sure to verify and review the information to make sure that everything has been completed as it should be on the envelopes for mail ballots. The new summer primary is August 4th. That does lead to some additional challenges in preparation. Training location during June and July becomes a little bit more difficult. We often use Buck Hall for Fire Hall for training. They're a little busier during the summer. As you can imagine, they're also doing trainings and things like that. So we are looking into a number of different options there. And we have some different leads on some things, so we're going to continue to work on that over the next several weeks and try to get to a final place where we have space held for us. That continues to be one of our biggest administrative challenges, just having enough space for all of the different types of activities that we have to do. There's a little uncertainty about the dates of the new equipment certification, so I know that John talked to you about that a little at the last meeting. We did have a meeting just yesterday with Hart, and we've talked about it internally, and we've decided really if we're going to implement this in 2026, we really need to have delivery of that equipment by around mid-May. We're just putting kind of May 15th as the date. If we get it by May 15th, then we can implement it for the August primary. If we don't have it by that date, it's going to be really hard to accept new equipment between that August primary and the November general. It also is probably ill-advised to roll out new equipment in the general election, especially because this equipment is going to have an additional feature which will let voters review the ballot. So it's going to scan the ballot for the voter, and it's going to tell the voter what they marked on the ballot. The voter's going to be able to verify that. That's a question we've had a number of times in recent years. Well, how do I know that the ballot is counting my marks correctly? Well, now you'll be able to see that directly, and you'll have to confirm that on the screen. That's going to take a little additional time. That's going to take a little additional instruction by our officers. So we really want a primary to kind of run that out first, or a special election to run that out first, so we have a chance to see how that operates in real life and see what does it create a time delay, what kind of voter education do we need to do more of. So if we're not meeting that date, then we'll transfer those funds from fiscal 26 to fiscal 27, and then we would likely implement the equipment at the end of the year. So probably we would work with Hart to try to get that in December. I would love to get it out there sooner. From an administrative angle and from the workload this year, I don't think any of us will be too sad if we can't get it done by May 15th, because it'll just be easier to update manuals, change trainings, and we'll have some time over the winter, hopefully without, assuming there's not more special elections, we'll have some time over the winter to implement that, get it ready for a primary. So we'll know by May 15th. We'll probably know, we're going to meet again with Hart next month. They'll probably have an idea at that point as to whether the state process is going to be able to get done in time to get us equipment by then. It's going to be close. So we shall see, and I will give you guys an update, as we get closer. Does that make sense to you all in terms of the cost-benefit analysis of when to put that in place?
Yes.
Okay.
You don't have any notion from elect about whether it's going to happen sooner rather than later?
So where it is in the process now, they have done the testing. They did a 2-week period where they tested the equipment. They put it through all these kind of rigors, and then after that, they have a comment period where they talk with the vendor about any problems they had, any things they maybe want to see them update or change, questions they might have. Once that's done, then the staff at Elect would produce like a report to the board on, here's the testing process, and the electoral board ultimately has to approve the certification. So I think that the challenge to our timeline of mid-May is that there's several things that still have to happen, and none of those happen overnight. As you all know, you have to prepare materials for board meetings in advance, and then have time to review it and think about it. So I'm not super high on this being done by May 15th in terms of a deliverable, but you never know. Maybe the staff report goes pretty quickly and they approve it in April and Hart's able to deliver. So I'll continue to provide you all reports in the next 2 months. And I think by then we'll know where we're at and when we'll implement this. So, summer holidays note. So Friday, June 19th, that would be the first day of early voting for the August primary. So per the law, you have to have early voting started by the 45th day. Technically, the 45th day is always on that Saturday, but because we aren't open on that Saturday, we always start it on Friday, and that's true across the state. In this particular instance, now it's going to move back one more day. So we're going to be having early voting the first day on June the 18th for that August primary, and then the office will be closed for a county holiday on Juneteenth on Friday, June 19th. We also have another holiday during that early voting period, Friday, July 3rd. So we will note that on our website for people. But that's something for you all to let your parties know as they're talking to their constituents about the upcoming primaries. Those are a couple dates where we will not have early voting. All right. March special election updates. We're moving along real good. 164 tasks done, 156 tasks left to go. We only have 2 overdue, so we're 98.8% compliant with being on time at this point. So feeling really good about our progress there, especially because these elections have been in such short form. We're not going to know what to do with ourselves when we get to the general election. It's going to feel like we have so much time. So that's really good that that's going well. Key dates for the March 10th special that's coming up. Again, only Woodbridge District voters are eligible to vote. There's 12 precincts in the Woodbridge District. Early voting starts there on Saturday, February 28th, so that's this Saturday, and that is both at the office per the ordinance, and that's also at the DMV. The ordinance specifies because Woodbridge does not technically have a early voting site in its boundary, the ordinance specifies for those districts that don't have an early voting site which site will be open, and the DMV is open and thankfully very close to voters in that district. It's just across the line there, which is basically I-95. Mail ballots have been received by most voters, I think, at this point, and then election day is March 10th from 6 a.m. until 7 p.m. The nice thing for election day, we kind of shift our staff a little bit so people are working half days. We don't need the coverage that we need on our support lines because we're not taking questions from 300,000 plus voters. We're taking questions from a really small portion of the county. Our warehouse is also really close to the Woodbridge District, so if any site needs support, we have staff, election officers in the field already, but our staff is very close by to go help with any problems. So I feel like we are in good stead for that.
So I assume that because it's a special election and school is in session, we may be voting in different parts of the building than we would in a general election. So I've been telling people it's all the regular precincts, but I think all but one of them are schools. So, because school's in session, they may shift the voting to another area that is not where we would traditionally be.
Yeah. John, do you know offhand how many of the sites have the same rooms as usual, or?
Not offhand.
Okay, we can provide the board with that information though. And we could provide a list to the parties of which locations have different rooms. Well, what I know we always try to do if we have a room change is we try to use some signs to direct people to the right entrance. And the nice thing is with only 12 precincts open, it makes it a little easier to do that. So we can make sure that is taken care of as well. Okay. Any other questions or concerns related to the March 10th election?
No, don't have any. Thank you.
Okay.
All good.
New business, these planning for the April special election. So you all were sent a list of the ballot order, the equipment allocation, and the staffing allocation per precinct for approval for this election. So if would you all like to go through those kind of one at a time?
Sure.
So the ballot order there, you see, we're talking about, now this is a countywide special, and this is a really hard one to project. I think when we have like a governor's race or presidential race, we can look at the last 3 or 4 elections and we can see like, okay, the percentage of voters is within this range. We have, 38 to 42% of voters typically in this election. It gives us a real good idea. And we even now are getting some pretty good idea of how many voters are using early voting versus using mail voting versus going out on election day. This one's really unusual. We haven't had a statewide special since I don't know when. And special elections themselves are usually very low turnout affairs, maybe 3%, maybe 7%, maybe 10 or 12 in a busy special. But this obviously has national import on the ballot. This has a constitutional question on the ballot. So I would imagine we have taken it to, when we're preparing for this, we're trying to think of it more like a general election in case the turnout is that high. I don't think we'll quite see that level of turnout, but I do think that we could see a significant turnout. So in terms of our ballot order, our mail ballots are as requested, so that's easy. That's a 1-to-1. Same thing with early voting. Those are printed on demand at the early voting sites. So the only thing we have to prepare is the election day totals. And what we prepared here is a 40% of active and inactive voters by precinct, with a few additional ballots for our test deck, and then 100 ballots of provisional ballots at each location in case we have provisional voters, which I think that's more than enough. I don't imagine we'll have that many provisional voters. To put that kind of in comparison, I wanted to pull a few numbers for you all. So I looked up the 2025 general election day turnout to compare to some of these numbers. So I pulled precinct 101, which in this ballot order has 1,650. We had 1,014 voters in the 2025 general. So that significantly exceeds that turnout. Precinct 203 has 2,050 ballots ordered here. I guess I should say actually 1,900 for election day specifically. And there's 1,226 voters in the 2025 general. Going to precinct 412, we're ordering 1,100 ballots for election day itself, non-provisional. And there were 695 voters in precinct 412. And precinct 601 has 1,500 ballots in this ballot order here. We had 841 in the 2025 general. So we're looking at somewhere between, maybe not quite double, but somewhere between 50 to 80% more ballots than what we have in the 2025 general. So I feel pretty comfortable with it. For us to run out of ballots at 40% of election day only, that would mean we'd have to have a turnout that would be 70 or 80% kind of equivalent to like a presidential election. So I think we're pretty good in this situation. Again, if we did have a situation where we had a particular precinct that had a high turnout, more than expected, we can always print some ballots and send them out with one of the officers to one of those sites. But we haven't had to do that except a special election where we had some ballot issues. So I think this will cover it. And we could, I know in a previous one, and Heidi, you made a suggestion of reducing the election day a little bit. I think that was advisable in that situation. I wouldn't push this one too much lower just because it's
Unknown.
It's an unknown, it's a countywide, which makes it hard. The specials are much easier for us to react to things. When it's a countywide, it's much harder, and the sin of wasting a little money is a lot less than the sin of running out of ballots is the thing that you never want to do, especially as a board that approves the order. So anyway, John generated this. We looked at it. I think it's a good total, and I think it looks good. So.
Okay. Any other questions? Motion to accept the ballot order?
Make a motion to accept the ballot order.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Very good.
All righty. Moving on to staffing. We have a staffing set here that's kind of probably again somewhere between what we would normally see for a special and what we'd see for a general election. So we're looking at having 1 to 2 poll book officers. We'll have a chief officer, an assistant chief, and an equipment provisional specialist at each precinct. So there's your leadership team. And I think in an election like this too, they have plenty of time to assist with other things like relieving a poll book officer, helping out the scanner, those kind of things. We have either 1 or 2 poll book officers in each of these locations to check in voters. I would say 2 at most, but there's 1 in a number of locations where they're just not busy. These locations would have 2 poll books for check-in, so if they did get busy and they only had 1 poll book officer, the assistant chief, the equipment specialist, the chief could all step in and still check in voters, and then they always have their chief station too, so they have a couple of different options there. We do have a scanner officer at every precinct because it's good to have somebody there to make sure that voters are getting their ballot scanned properly so their vote counts. And then greeters kind of varies by precincts. At some of our busier precincts, we have a greeter to kind of assist with the process. At some of our less busy precincts, it's not really necessary because you're not going to have like a big crowd or anything to fight when you come into the precinct. So this puts our total staffing at each precinct at 5 to 7 officers. And I'll go ahead to the equipment allocation just because it kind of relates to it. Again, we have 2 poll books for check-in at each location. That's not always necessary at some locations. We could probably just have 1 plus the chief's poll book, but it just makes sense in case a poll book has an issue, you've got a backup. If you get busy for a short period of time, you can flex officers to a poll book, whereas if you don't have the equipment, there's not much you can do in that situation. We have 1 ballot scanner because we don't think 2 scanners will really be necessary in any of our locations. I don't expect any lines there. And then we have 1 ADA ballot marking device, which is again for individuals with disabilities, helps them mark a ballot. That is a legal requirement that we have to meet. So we do need to have 1 of those at every facility, even if they're often not used or sit dormant for the day, but it is a requirement. So that is the staffing and equipment allocation.
I just have a question after these elections. I mean, we go through these, and I think you've done a great job in terms of guesstimating, what our needs are. But do you ever have sort of an after-action report based on these kinds of things? Did we have enough ballots? Was there? I mean, do you do that sort of thing? And then is that kind of an ongoing? I don't know, statistic or report that you can then hone down your projections?
Yeah.
I haven't noticed any, issues, but I don't know if maybe you do have these after-action reports.
Yeah, I mean, we don't always have a report per se. Sometimes we put a full report together. Sometimes we always do feedback from the officers.
Right.
So we look at the feedback they give, and we do sort of we pull that all together into a summary of sort of the issues that there were there on election day and during early voting in terms of, and that could be anything from, like you're talking about, like if they needed more equipment or something like that, to things they felt like they needed more training on, or, hey, it'd be helpful if we had a position that did this at this particular precinct, or sometimes those are real like precinct specific things too, like this one precinct needs more signs outside because the entrance to the room is around the back and voters are getting lost and not sure where to go. So yeah, we do that.
Okay.
Been a little bit more of a challenge this year to to get to that, but I can say confidently I've been in elections for 15 years, and I'm proud of the fact that I've never been involved in an election where we ran out of ballots. So how close we are to that margin, that's something we could certainly produce for the board. We could look at that pretty easily for the last several elections too, and build a table of here's what our ballot order was, and here's what our final results were on election day, to kind of see, are we shaving it too close? Are we really getting more ballots printed than we need to? So do you want us to produce that, Heidi?
Well, I just want to have a good understanding of, like I said, our preparation and our projections, and, based on real-time And again, the special election versus the primary versus the general, I mean, I understand all of that, but I'm just, I do like to see, what's the word, not statistics, but a measurement.
Yeah.
That, and that we continually hone it.
Yeah.
So anyway, that would
Yeah.
be helpful.
Yeah, well, we'll create that and get that over to you guys,
Okay.
and we can talk about the next board meeting if you guys would like to.
Okay.
I think that would be great. I think in the, when we have follow-ups in the board meetings, we tend to talk about training and operational things, but we don't talk about that so much, so that would be great to just visit that. We've certainly have enough elections over the last several years that we have a lot of data since John and I have kind of been working on generating these for the boards and the board's approval. So we'll create something that basically gets a side-by-side for each election of how many we ordered for election day and how many were used, and we can see
Good.
how much our padding is there.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
All right, I'll entertain, if there's any more discussion or questions, I'll entertain a motion to accept the election officer staffing report and recommendations, as well as the equipment for each precinct for the upcoming special election in April.
I make a motion.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
And I assume schools are going to be open on April 21st.
I sent a letter asking that they be closed. The superintendent of schools is under no obligation to to respond to our request related to that. I do know it is an internal discussion that they're having with the schools and probably with the school board. And I don't know what the timeline of when they'll decide that is. I mean, we've had elections where they've done that well in advance and ones where they've done that at the last minute, and it's always a challenge for them. The school calendar is set so far before the
Right.
school year even starts that when they have these things kind of come up, I looked at the calendar to see what other school days they had, and I think it was April 6th. I think it was like the Monday, would that be the Monday 2 weeks before? They do have a teacher day that day, so they could possibly swap it. But that, I think, was partly by design, because I think that's the day after Easter.
It is spring
So,
break.
I think there was an intention there to give, families some flexibility if they're celebrating the holidays, traveling to see family over Easter. So I don't think they'll want to switch that. So we'll just kind of wait and see what they do. It's always our recommendation that they close schools because it's safer for the kids. Because it reduces the number of cars and bus traffic and all that in the parking lots and gives more parking spots for voters. And also, as we talked about earlier, it lets us continue to use the rooms that voters are used to, rather than having to, in addition to the parking lots being full, now voters sometimes have to go to a different entrance, go to a different room in the school. So it's a lot more complicated with schools in session. So if there's a possibility that could be staff only or schools are closed that day, that's always our preference. But again, the schools have their own priorities they have to consider. They have to allow us to use the space on election day per state guidelines and per the decisions made by the county supervisors, but they don't have to be closed if they don't want to. So we will I'll keep you all apprised if we hear any news on that. I imagine if they do, that'll probably be a local news story too. So, the last thing for the April 21st is just the approval of the early voting hours. We are again recommending the maintenance of the previous hours we use, which is 8:30 to 4:30 each day, which matches our office hours. Wednesdays until 7 p.m., which is a popular day to let people that are coming after work vote. That is any Wednesday from the start of early voting all the way through the end. Saturdays are 8:30 to 5, pretty much in line with the state code. And Sundays are from 11 to 5. And again, our local ordinance in Prince William County requires us to be open for at least 6 hours for any early voting day that we're open. So the board has flexibility as to which hours they want to choose. It does have to be at least 6. So 11 to 5 seems like the best time frame, because really from 11 to 3:30 is really when we're busy, and then it really drops off towards the end of the day. But we found that if we go earlier than that, it gets really hard to get officers. It overlaps with the church for people, all that kind of stuff. So
How many Sundays are we talking about?
just one,
Okay.
yeah.
And it would be the one, not the last weekend before, but the weekend prior
Yeah.
Sunday.
So the week before Election Day, we would be open every single day at all of our sites from Sunday to Saturday. We'd also be open at all the locations the Saturday before that. And then up until that, for the 4 or 5 weeks before that, we would just be the office that would be open. So I think, you know, if we had time to look at the ordinance, it would be nice to have a little bit longer period since this is a statewide one. But that wasn't really, when we were going through the ordinance and working with the Board of County Supervisors on that and discussing it at board meetings, we weren't thinking about, you know, statewide or countywide specials as much as what we usually see, like what we're seeing right now with the Woodbridge District and the 23rd and that kind of thing. So, but I think it should still be enough. I mean, most people vote in that last, I think, I looked at one of the general elections recently, and I think it was, the 50-50 point is like the 9 or 10 days before early voting ends. So the first 35 days is about half the voters, and then most of them come that last week and a half. So that's really when people want to vote anyway, and that's when the satellites are open and the voting's closer to them. So we'd recommend the same hours because it seems to be working well.
Okay.
I move we approve the same early voting hours.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. One more thing, I think, on this election, just so you guys know. We are always trying to look at our processes and create improvements. So, Heidi, to the thing you asked earlier about, like, what do we look at? One of the things we look at that's really easy to see is our cures. How many ballots that voters made mistakes on when they were completing their ballot envelope. And if you do make a mistake that has what's called a material omission in state law, your ballot won't count. So if you don't provide your last 4 of your social security number, if you don't sign the ballot, if you don't put your name on there are a number of things that would cause your ballot to not be counted. When voters do that, that ballot goes into cure, and then voters have an opportunity to fix that. And our cure rate's pretty good. So in recent elections, we've had somewhere between 3.5% and 5% of our ballots go into cure, which is a little above the state average. And we've been steadily increasing the number that have cured. From a few years ago, it was around 50 to 55%, and it's been upwards of 75 to 80% now in our last recent elections because we've improved some processes and communication with voters. So we looked at the form as a staff and looked at some different design changes, and we made a few things that we think will make a difference. We highlighted all of the fields that are definitely required. So you don't have to put a middle name on your ballot envelope for it to count. It's helpful in case you have a common name. But there's so much other information that's there, your address, your last 4 social security, your year of birth. So we've highlighted all the fields so people can see that. We've continued to use, we had the boxes in gray where the year of birth and the last 4 are. And I think what we found was we had more signatures that kind of popped up where people were missing the signature. And I think it was that there was a little less room below there. But also I think the gray at the bottom made people maybe feel like they had gotten to the end of the form. So these are all like, hey, if we do this, it might change 1%. So these are little things. But we changed the names to be highlighted. We have the boxes, so it's still the 4 digits, which is helpful because we were getting people that were putting like their birthday, like 12/3, like for December 3rd, and that's not what the requirement is. So the four boxes helps people identify it. We also added the X to the signature line because that's just a sort of common standardized form thing that will help people see that a little bit better. So we hope that this will get the rate down. The nice thing is we have a lot of elections this year, so these are the envelopes that are being printed for the April election, and we'll have a chance to see how it performs and compare the ballots needing cure to previous elections and see if this improves. And oftentimes it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. This gets better, but maybe this is not doing as well. So hopefully this will help with that process, but that will be rolled out in the April election.
And the date, if somebody doesn't put the date on there, that's not gonna mess up.
Yeah, it's not a required, field. So, yeah, the only ones on there, the date, the middle name, and the suffix are not required. And we did change it so it's last and then first. But honestly, even if they're out of order, as long as they put it would still count because we'd have enough additional information with all the other information on there to be able to identify who that that voter is. So, okay, so just a note for you all. We'll report back on how that does after the April election. Hopefully that helps improve our percentage, because that's also just a workload stuff for us. If we get a little 1 or 1.5% improvement on that, in a big election, that's 100 or 200 less voters that we have to contact. It's a lot less work for the AB team, for the mail ballot team, as they're working. So
since this is not a candidate-driven election, it's an issue thing. So obviously there are organized groups that are running the campaigns. In terms of observers, all those kind of things that would normally apply to candidates, does each side get 2 observers if we have to, or are the rules? Well, the rules are different, I guess, for an issue race like this, as opposed to where the political parties have candidates.
yeah, I know they're allowed, Keith. I'm not sure if I'd have to look at the code. The code has a lot of specifics on how many are allowed and from what group and at what time, both for the type of election, but also during the day versus at closing and per check-in station. So let me look that up, and at the next board meeting we can report back on that, so we're aware of that. I think that will be, that's a good note for the training staff though too, to note that, because we're used to elections that are political party based. I mean, and that's where we see most of our observers from. So it would be good to be prepared for that. So
well, and then so the parties are obviously going to be involved, even though officially the campaigns are run by a separate group. So then the issue is, is the political party entitled to have someone there in addition to the official campaign for, against, or that kind of thing?
okay, yeah. Let me look at that section of code and report back to you. We can review it together in the next board meeting, if that works. Okay. I think the last item of business here is the EBGR duties, and I think you guys didn't really go into this in the last meeting. You guys kind of touched on it at the end, but I didn't know if I assume you guys have had a chance to review it, and I didn't know what you had in terms of potential changes for this one.
So I reviewed it pretty thoroughly, and I'm fairly satisfied with what we have here. Okay. But I wanted to ask you, and specifically, were there any areas that either you were assigned exclusively or shared that you felt were that you'd like to see changed, based on your experience? I'm
pretty happy with it at this point. I mean, I think, Heidi, that this has been sort of an ongoing discussion, I think, over probably the last 3 years. I think this is either round 3 or round 4 of looking at this.
Right.
And I think because of that, we've had, 7 or 8 different board members and myself who've reviewed it and modified it. And I know we added several things last year. We clarified several areas and that's good. I think that, we talked about this in a VRAV context a couple days ago, that anytime you have a work group, if you have somebody who, like Keith, who's been doing this for can I describe it in decades now, Keith, almost, who's been doing it. I don't want to date you, but you have a lot of experience, so that lends a particular quality to the process. If you have individuals, Heidi and Yolanda, you guys are relatively new to this, so you have fresh eyes, and that lends some good qualities to the process. So when you have kind of a combination of those things, and I think we've had that for several years now, so I feel pretty happy with it, and it's probably a good thing for you all to sort of note as the year goes on. Maybe keep a copy of this around, and if there's anything for next year, to make note of it. I'll try to do the same, but I feel like it's working pretty well. I think when you're in a smaller jurisdiction, I think this discussion is a little bit more, what can the board do to take some pressure off the registrar, who might have a staff of 1 or 2 people. It's a little bit different in a large jurisdiction where our staff is completing 99% of the work, and you guys are giving us direction in terms of the framework for that kind of thing. So, and I think everywhere in here works for that, and I think we have this identifies well the areas that are certainly, you know, the electoral boards, that there's no going around the code. Like, you guys decide, you guys adjudicate provisional ballots. We have nothing to do with that outside of providing the research for you guys. You guys appoint the election officers and have oversight over the decisions of the policies related to them. You guys are the arbiters of election certification. So those are all things that the staff can certainly provide you support on those things, but it has to be, you know, from your hand when those decisions are made and when those forms are signed. And outside of that, I think there's a number of things that are just kind of ongoing, you guys expect, and I expect the staff to complete. And then there's a number of things where we have to kind of go back and forth, like, hey, this issue has come up and we want to do a press release, and I'm going to send you guys the press release to get your feedback, you know, before we put it out. And there's a push and a pull there, and a sharing of those duties and some oversight. So I'm happy with it. I think we made good changes last year, and if you guys are good with it, I'm fine with how it is.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay,
Do we need a motion?
I think so, yes,
Okay.
please.
Madam Chair, I move that we adopt and approve this version of the breakdown General Registrar Electoral Board duties.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Very good.
Okay. I will post this one. I thought we might have a few changes today, so I had ready to make some edits and then bring you guys a print version at the next meeting. But you guys have adopted this. We'll put that up with the supplemental materials, and then I will bring at the next meeting a copy for you guys to sign to formalize it. But I think you guys have
Very
put
good.
this in place now. So if
Thank
that
you.
works for you guys.
That works great, thank you.
Not public comments, I
All right, let me see.
Oh, yeah. You can do it. You can do it after the public comments.
Okay, the next order of business is establishing our next meeting. Do we have a recommendation? Do we need, we will meet in March, but we don't need to meet before the special election, so it would be after that, after certification and things like that, right? So we'd be looking at probably at least the third week, probably the fourth week of March? Does that make sense, or?
And I think that's the week of the VIBA conference.
Ah, indeed.
So
So
it
do
may
we want to
not-
meet before that, or no? Or should we just meet there? No, sorry. Eric's not going to be
Well,
there.
you guys are going to be certifying the election on, but that'll just be certification tasks from the, I think
Right,
I think by the 13th. I think that's what the
Correct.
schedule's online, yeah.
yes, correct.
When did you say VIBA is?
It's the
23rd to the 25th.
Yeah,
Oh, okay. Did you guys want to do like the last day of March or the first day of April?
oh, so you want to go after? Well, sure.
It would give you guys a chance to meet before the April special, because there may be things
Oh,
to
yes,
discuss
absolutely.
related to that, and
So we could look at either Friday the 20th or Monday the 30th. Or Friday the 27th.
Like the 27th.
You like that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Keith, do you like Friday, the 27th?
Sure.
okay.
What time?
10 a.m. So our next electoral board meeting, if you all are,
Eric, does that work for you?
yep.
okay, so Friday, March 27th at 10 a.m. here.
Okay, now it's time for public comments. There is no one that has signed up in advance. Are there any folks in the audience that would like to speak for 3 minutes? If not, I move to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.